Claire's black dress was too simple for Aura at the summit. She knew it. She had known it when she bought it. But it was the same one she had worn the night she met Ethan 5 years ago. A private irony for a night that promised to be a public disaster. The maitre d', with a practiced smile, led her through the maze of tables, the murmurs, the clinking of crystal, the scent of truffles and expensive seafood. It all felt alien to her. At the far end of the room, at the round table next to the picture window, showing the illuminated Manhattan skyline, was her family, or what was left of it. Ethan, with his perfect-toothed smile, already a bit glassy from the wine. To his right, Catherine, his mother, her expression as sharp as ever. Aunt Margaret, a few cousins, a couple of partners from the firm. A circle of malicious expectation. "So, you finally decide to honor us with your presence, Claire," Catherine said without standing up. Her voice a silken blade cut through the air. "We thought you'd gotten lost, or perhaps had something more important to do." Claire kissed the cold cheek Catherine offered. The traffic on Fifth Avenue was hellish. "Happy birthday, Ethan." Her husband gave her a brief, almost annoyed glance for the interruption. He was already deep in an anecdote about a golf deal. "Sit down, honey," he said, pointing to the empty chair next to his Aunt Margaret, the one furthest from him. "We saved you a spot." Claire sat. The dinner proceeded through impeccably presented dishes and empty conversations. She ate little, observing, waiting. She knew the moment would come. Catherine hadn't seated her at her side to keep her far away. It was a punishment, a reminder of her place. The desserts arrived, a chocolate soufflé that Ethan adored. The waiters cleared the plates. The conversation lulled for a moment. It was then that Catherine raised her voice, addressing no one and everyone. "And nothing special for the birthday boy?" she asked, her pale eyes fixed on Claire. "Although, come to think of it, with you one never knows. Last Christmas was memorable. Remember Ethan? That garish silk tie." A stifled laugh rippled through the table. Ethan rolled his eyes. "Complicit. Please, Mother, don't remind me of that monstrosity." Claire took a deep breath. She pulled a simple white paper envelope from her purse with no inscription. It was thin, almost fragile. She placed it on the tablecloth in front of Ethan's plate. "Happy birthday," she said in a clear voice. An uncomfortable silence. Everyone looked at the envelope. There was no jewelry box, no keys to an expensive car, just a cheap envelope. Ethan looked at it as if it were a cockroach. A mocking smile formed on his lips. "Seriously, this is it. After showing up late and dressed for a funeral, you bring me paper." He picked up the envelope between his thumb and forefinger with disdain. "Let me guess. A voucher for a romantic dinner?" "Oh, God forbid." "A poem." Catherine let out a short, dry laugh. "Don't be harsh, son. In her own way, Claire always tries. Even if the results are, well, limited. It's difficult when you don't have the talent or the class for the important things, to support a man, a family, to do more than be a failed decoration." The word hung in the air. Failed. Failed. Claire didn't look away from Ethan. He held the envelope, toying with it. "My mother has a point deep down," Ethan said. And his tone was no longer one of complicity, but of pure cruelty. "Look around you, Claire. What have you accomplished? You quit your job. You can't give me children. You don't know how to run a house. You can't even pick out a decent gift for your own husband. You're an unfinished project, an empty promise." Claire felt the heat of their stares. The second-hand embarrassment, the morbid curiosity, but she didn't lower her head. "Open the envelope, Ethan," she said, her voice calm. "Why?" "To see your good intentions in writing." The sneer on his face deepened. Then, with a brusque gesture, He didn't toss the envelope onto the table. He threw it directly at Claire's face. The paper's edge grazed her cheek and fell onto her empty plate, getting stained with a dark sauce. A collective gasp. Not even Catherine had expected that move. Ethan's sister Laura put a hand to her mouth. Ethan leaned back in his chair, defiant, a glass of cognac in his hand. "There's your gift. I hope you're satisfied." Everything stopped. The silence was absolute. The waiters, motionless by the kitchen door, stared straight ahead, pretending not to hear. Claire looked at the soiled envelope on her plate. Then she slowly raised her gaze and looked at her husband. And then she smiled. It wasn't a forced smile, not a sad one, not an insane one. It was a genuine, calm, almost pitying smile. A smile that didn't fit the humiliation, the fury, the tears everyone expected. Ethan blinked, bewildered. "What are you laughing at?" he spat, his voice losing some of its confidence. Claire stood up, picked up her purse, and with deliberate movements took the stained envelope from the plate, wiped it with a napkin, and put it in her bag. Then she approached Ethan, leaned in as if to give him the customary farewell kiss on the cheek, but stopped an inch from his ear. Her voice was a whisper so low only he could hear it, laden with a terrifying calm. "You're going to regret that more than you can possibly imagine." She straightened up. She saw the confusion, the first glimmer of doubt in Ethan's eyes. She nodded at the table in general, a polite, icy smile on her lips. "Good night, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening." She didn't wait for a response. She turned and walked between the tables, feeling their eyes on her back. She walked with her head held high, the same black dress, now seeming like a suit of armor. As she passed the service door to the kitchens, a tall, broad figure in a white chef's jacket slightly blocked her path. It was Leo, the chef owner. He had been a college classmate of her mother's 1,000 years ago. His intelligent old eyes looked at her with immediate understanding, without a trace of pity. Without a word, he slipped something into Claire's hand, a folded piece of a kitchen paper towel. Claire clutched it in her fist and kept walking without looking back, out into the cold New York night air. The drive back to the Park Avenue penthouse was a blur. She didn't cry, she didn't tremble, she just drove her hands firm on the steering wheel. The smile gone from her face, replaced by a granite determination. The public humiliation, the word failure, the envelope hitting her face, it all burned like fire inside her. But it was a cold, controlled fire. She would use it as fuel. The penthouse was dark, silent, empty. It had never been a home. It was another one of her concessions, another of her failures, not being able to fill these impersonal walls with life. She turned on the light in the study, the room Ethan rarely used. She closed the door. Only then, with fingers that now trembled slightly, did she open her fist. The crumpled, greasy paper towel, an address written by hand. 8 Memory Lane Basement, tomorrow, 11 a.m. L. Leo. What did he want? This wasn't the time to wonder. She left the paper on the desk and went to the portrait of her father Julian hanging on the wall. A man with a quiet smile and dreamy eyes, who had died too young, leaving his family in ruin and a pile of unanswered questions. Claire ran her fingers over the frame, then knelt. At the bottom of the built-in bookshelf, a piece of oak molding looked fixed. She pressed on a specific spot with just the right amount of force. A soft click. A small secret compartment, her father's idea, swung open. Inside weren't the jewels Catherine suspected she was hiding, just a small digital safe the size of a book. She entered the code, the date of her father's death. The door opened. Inside, neatly arranged, were several folders, and on top of everything, an envelope identical to the one she had brought to dinner. White, simple, unmarked. The original. The one he had thrown in her face, the one now stained with sauce in her purse, was a copy. An empty copy. A bait. Claire took out the real envelope. She didn't open it. She didn't need to. She knew what it contained. Photocopies, bank statements, blurry photos taken in a hurry. A name, a date, a figure. The rotten foundations of the Sterling Empire. The foundation that she, the failure, the decoration had spent 2 years silently unearthing brick by brick. She held it against her chest. The calm fury washed over her again. You're going to regret that. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. And the long, silent night in the empty house was just the beginning. The morning came with a cold sun streaming through the living room windows, empty. Claire hadn't slept. She sat on the same sofa where 5 years ago Ethan had proposed. She remembered his smile full of promises. Let me take care of you, Claire. Forget the sorrows, the problems. I'll give you the world. And she, an orphan in debt, with her small design studio on the verge of closing, had seen a lifeline. How naive. The buzz of the intercom startled her. It was Sophia. There was no need to ask who it was. Only 2 people had the code for the outer gate. Her lawyer and her sister, and Eleanor was in New York. Sophia burst in like a whirlwind with her worn leather briefcase and her air of having no time to waste. She was short, with short greying hair, and her brown eyes missed. You said it was urgent, and from your voice it wasn't a sign the divorce papers kind of urgent, she said without preamble, dropping her briefcase on the coffee table. What happened? Yesterday was the dinner. No, don't tell me, it was worse. Public humiliation at Aura at the summit. Claire interrupted, her voice hoarse. Catherine called me a failure in front of everyone. Ethan threw my gift in my face. Literally. Sophia let out a low whistle. Slowly, she sat down across from her. The envelope, the one he threw, was the empty copy. The original is there. Claire pointed to the open safe in the study. I came straight here, went over everything again. It's complete. Well, at least there's that. But it was a risky move, Claire. If he had opened the envelope right there. He wouldn't. He despises everything that comes from me. To him it was just a worthless piece of paper, another dismissive gesture. And that's precisely what will be his undoing. Sophia nodded thoughtfully. Then she pulled a dossier from her briefcase. It matches what I've found out. The Sterlings are on the brink. The Florida Keys investments are a disaster full of irregularities. The bank has been putting on pressure for months. And here's the interesting part. She paused dramatically. A good portion of the company's liquid assets, what's left of them, has been transferred to an account in the Cayman Islands over the last 6 months, in the name of a shell corporation. Claire stared at her. Ethan is gutting the company. It seems so, and in a hurry. Your evidence, Sophia gestured toward the study, indicates that the source of that money isn't entirely clean. Bribes to zoning officials, fake invoices. If the bank or the IRS finds out, it's not just the company that goes down. It's jail time. A heavy silence filled the room. Claire looked at her own hands. She felt no triumph, just a huge void and a dull rage. And Catherine? She finally asked. Catherine knows she has to know. But she's blind. She thinks the Sterling name will save her from everything as always. Hers is a different war, the war of appearances. That's why she attacked you yesterday. You're the loose piece, the one she can't control, the one who can dismantle the facade. A failed decoration. Catherine's words echoed again. Claire closed her eyes. It wasn't the first time. 3 years ago, she had won a small competition to redesign a public square in Greenwich Village, a modest project, but her own. She came home euphoric with a bottle of champagne. Ethan was waiting in the living room looking grim. "Claire, what is this?" he asked, pointing to the email from the competition organizers open on his tablet. "It's a project, Ethan. I won. It's small, but without consulting me." His voice was glacial. "What will people think, that my wife needs to work that I can't provide for her? It'll look like we're broke. But it's not about that. It's about it being mine. It's yours." Catherine had appeared at the door as if summoned. She always had that gift. "Your place is here, Claire, taking care of this house, preparing to provide an heir, not playing with models like a child. Look around you. This is yours. Or is it not enough for you? Are you that ungrateful?" The pressure was constant. Subtle at first, then blatant. "Leave that job, it's not proper. You don't have time for your duties. What will my friends say?" Until one day Ethan gave her the ultimatum, the studio or the marriage. The Greenwich Village Square was never redesigned, at least not with her design. "Claire." Sophia's voice brought her back to the present. "Are you sure you want to do this? It's the mousetrap. If you release this, there's no turning back. It will be a dirty, very dirty war." Claire opened her eyes and looked at her lawyer. "I started digging 2 years ago, when I discovered the first strange transfers on his computer. It was by chance. I was looking for a tax file. He underestimated me so much he didn't even log out. And I kept going because of my father, Sophia. My father's company went bankrupt under suspicious circumstances. He always said they had sunk him, and the Sterlings were among his main competitors. This is no longer just my broken marriage. It's something bigger and more rotten." Sophia nodded slowly. "All right, then we play. First step is to secure this. Digital copies of everything in the cloud on an external hard drive that I will keep. And I need names, Lair. Where did you get this photo?" She pointed to a blurry image in one of the documents showing Ethan with a man in a parking garage exchanging a briefcase. Claire hesitated. "It's a source. Someone who also has reasons to dislike the Sterlings. I can't tell you more yet. It's for their protection and mine. Trustworthy. So far, yes. They gave me this and a warning to be careful that Catherine won't just stand by." As if the mention of her name had summoned her, the landline in the penthouse, that archaic device Catherine alone used to call, began to ring. A shrill tone that cut the tense air. Claire and Sophia looked at each other. No one used that number. No one except her. Claire stood up and answered, her hand steady. "Yes. I knew you'd be there, scurrying like a rat to its hole after last night's spectacle." Catherine's voice was soft, venomous, like the brush of a snake. "You've managed to get all of New York talking. Congratulations. For one day, you're interesting." "What do you want, Catherine?" "I want you to remember your place. You are nothing, Claire. Nothing without this name, without this family. Everything you have, we gave you. And we can take it away with a single phone call. Do you understand?" Claire took a deep breath. She looked at the original envelope on the table next to Sophia's dossier. "I think you're mistaken, Catherine. I have nothing left to lose. The question is, do you—" A silence on the other end of the line, then a click of the tongue. "Ungrateful. Just like your father. Both of you useless dreamers. Look how he ended up. Do you want the same paths?" Claire's heart lurched. Her hand holding the receiver trembled. "What do you mean by that?" But Catherine had already hung up. The dial tone filled Claire's ear. "Was that her?" Sophia asked, standing beside her. Claire nodded slowly, hanging up the phone. The threat was clear, but it was the mention of her father that chilled her blood. Like your father. What did Catherine know? What had she meant by that path? We have to hurry, Claire said, her voice now urgent. Today, take everything. I have to go somewhere. She remembered the crumpled paper towel in her coat pocket. 8 Memory Lane Basement, 11 a.m. L. Leo, the chef, her mother's friend. What did he want after all these years? And why now? Where are you going? Sophia asked as she began methodically packing the documents into her briefcase. To see an old friend, or at least I hope so. As she left the building, the sky had clouded over. A light rain began to fall on Manhattan. Claire got into her car, a small utility vehicle that was hers alone, another of her small rebellions against the family's BMWs and Mercedes. Before starting the engine, she took out the paper towel and flattened it on the steering wheel. Memory Lane in the Greenwich Village neighborhood near where her square would have been. It didn't seem like a coincidence. She started the engine. In the rearview mirror, the Grand Park Avenue building shrank grey and cold in the drizzle. The mousetrap, Sophia had said. But she was no longer the mouse. She had nibbled the cheese and found the mechanism. Now she just had to spring it. However, as she merged into traffic, a feeling of being watched crept over her. A nondescript grey sedan seemed to have pulled out of a side street right behind her. It could be paranoia. After Catherine's call, anything was possible. But as she turned the corner onto the FDR drive, the grey car turned right behind her. She knew it wasn't paranoia. The chase had begun. The grey sedan didn't disappear. Claire took a sharp turn onto Canal Street, dove into a subterranean parking garage, circled several times, and exited through another ramp. Her father's old trick worked. The grey car was lost in the traffic. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were steady on the wheel. Catherine's threat was no longer just verbal. She had eyes on the street. Memory Lane was a narrow, quiet alley in Greenwich Village, away from the hustle. Number 8 was an old stone building with a small storefront on the ground floor. There was no sign, just a solid wooden door and a steamy window. The basement. Claire took a deep breath and knocked. Leo the chef opened it. He was no longer in his pristine white jacket, but a black turtleneck and simple pants. He looked older, more worldly, but his eyes were the same intelligent, observant, weary. "Come in quickly," he said, looking over her shoulder before closing the door. Inside wasn't a restaurant. It was a back room, a cluttered sanctuary. It smelled of old paper olive oil and herbs. Shelves were filled with old cookbooks, empty wine boxes, and hanging copper pans. In the center was a scarred wooden table with 2 chairs. "Were you followed?" Leo asked, offering her one of the chairs. "I think I lost them," Claire said, sitting down. "What is this place, Leo?" "My office. My refuge. The one place no one from your social circle would ever set foot in." He pulled out an unlabeled bottle of red wine and 2 glasses. "From my brother's place in Napa. He makes it himself. It's not expensive, but it's honest. The way wine should be. The way people should be." He poured 2 fingers worth. Claire accepted it. The taste was rough, earthy, real. "Why did you help me last night?" she asked directly. Leo took a sip, looking at her over the rim of the glass. "For your mother. For Isabel. She was my friend Claire. My best friend. When I was a dazzled young cook, and she was an art history student with more dreams than money. She would always come to my first restaurant, a dive in the East Village. She'd sit at the bar, make me laugh, talk to me about beauty while I burned potatoes." A nostalgic smile escaped him. She was a sunbeam that went out too soon. Claire felt a lump in her throat. She rarely spoke of her mother. Cancer had taken her too fast, too soon, leaving a hole that never closed. And why now, after all these years? Because last night I saw you, standing there in that black dress, smiling while they spit in your face. And I saw Isabel. I saw her same smile, the one she put on when things got really ugly. It was her armor. Leo put down the glass. And because she asked me to, Claire froze. What? Leo stood up, went to a dusty bookshelf, and from behind an encyclopedia of gastronomy, he pulled out a small, simple wooden box with a faded lid. He placed it on the table in front of Claire. She gave it to me a month before she died, Leo said. Keep this for me. If my daughter ever needs refuge, if you ever see her lost or in danger, give this to her and tell her the truth. Claire looked at the box as if it were a snake. The truth. What truth? Open it, Leo said softly. With trembling fingers, Claire lifted the lid. There were no jewels or money, just papers, letters, old photographs, and on top a black and white photo. A photo of her father, Julian, young and smiling with his arm around the shoulders of a woman who was not her mother. The woman was young, beautiful, with dark hair and an arrogant smile. Familiar. Too familiar. It's Catherine, Claire whispered, her heart now racing. It's a young Catherine. Yes. Leo nodded heavily. Your father and Catherine Sterling were engaged over 30 years ago. It was a scandal at the time, brief but intense. The families arranged it. He, the talented but penniless architect's son. She, the Sterling heiress, the perfect fairy tale. Claire stared at the photo, unable to look away. Her father, so young, so carefree, with his arm around the woman who was now her tormentor. What happened? Your father met your mother Isabel at an exhibition, and everything fell apart. He broke off the engagement with Catherine a month before the wedding. He humiliated her publicly. The Sterlings never forgave him. And your father, well, he married Isabel. They had a wonderful daughter, but his career never took off as it should have. Commissions vanished. Clients turned their backs on him. Until 10 years later, his studio went bankrupt. He always said they had sunk him. He had suspicions, but could never prove anything. Claire remembered her father's late nights, the frustration in his eyes, the sadness that sometimes enveloped him. The world isn't made for dreamers, honey, he used to tell her. Now she understood. You think it was them, the Sterlings? Leo shrugged. I have no proof. I just know that Catherine Sterling doesn't forget an offence, and your father committed the greatest offence possible. He rejected her for another woman, one without money, without a name. For Isabel. He paused. And now her son chose you, brought you into her house, and you haven't been the submissive wife she expected. You are Isabel's daughter. You are the living reminder of her humiliation. That's why she hates you, Claire. Not for who you are, but for what you represent. The pieces clicked into place with a dry, painful thud. It wasn't just class contempt. It was resentment. A 30-year deferred revenge. She was the instrument. And this? She asked, pointing to the other letters in the box. Letters from your father to your mother. Personal things. And this. Leo pulled out a large, sealed envelope from under the letters. Your mother told me this was the most important thing, that I shouldn't open it, that it was for you only if the time came. Claire took the envelope. On the outside, in her mother's elegant, confident handwriting, For my Claire when the world grows dark. She opened it. Inside were several things, a folded, ancient, yellowed architectural plan, and a letter in her mother's handwriting. My dearest Claire, if you are reading this, it means things have gotten difficult, and that Leo, good friend that he is, has decided the time has come. Forgive me for not telling you sooner. Your father and I wanted to protect you from this old grudge, but resentment has a long memory. The plan accompanying this letter is your father's first major project, a residential building in the village with an inner courtyard that was highly praised. He won an award shortly after the construction company went bankrupt. The project was never built, or so we thought. A few years ago, after your father's death, an old colleague of his, Arthur Martin, contacted me. He said he had seen our building erected in Miami under another architect's name with another developer. The style was very similar, but not identical, as if they had stolen the idea the soul and dressed it in cheap clothes. The developer was a subsidiary of a company called Gold Coast Investments LLC. I followed the trail. The ultimate owner after several layers is Sterling Holdings. Your father didn't imagine it. They did it to him. Be strong, my love. Be the woman I know you are. And please be careful with Catherine. Do not underestimate her thirst for revenge. It is deeper and older than you are. Love you always, Mum. Claire couldn't hold back the tears. They rolled silently down her cheeks, falling onto the old paper. They weren't tears of sadness, but of rage, a pure, crystalline rage. They had stolen from her father, stolen his dream, his legacy, and now they were trying to steal from her her dignity, her life. Her voice came out hoarse, broken. They ruined him. They killed him. Not directly, Leo said cautiously, but they took away his light. They stole his joy. And in the end, that kills too. Claire wiped her tears with the back of her hand. She took a deep breath. The sadness was transforming before her eyes into a steely determination. I need to see that man, Arthur Martin. Do you have his contact information? Leo nodded. Your mother wrote it on the back of the letter. He's an old man now, lives in retirement, but if you tell him you're the daughter of Julian and Isabel, he'll see you. He paused. Claire, this stuff you have on your husband on the company, be careful. Catherine won't stop. You saw it last night. And the car that followed you was no coincidence. I know. At that moment, Claire's cell phone vibrated in her pocket. It was an unknown number, but with a New York area code. Her sister, Eleanor. I have to take this, she said, standing up. Leo nodded, collecting the glasses. Claire went to the window, turning her back to the room. Eleanor. Claire. Are you okay? Her sister's voice, usually so calm, sounded agitated with an echo as if she were on the street. I just spoke with Sophia. She told me about last night. God, Claire, I'm so sorry. I'm fine. Better than you think. What about you? Why are you calling from an unknown number? An uncomfortable silence. Because someone has been asking about me here. About us. A guy with a heavy accent asking my neighbours and in my doorman saying he was an old family friend. But he's not Claire. I've never seen him. And he showed a photo of us when we were kids. A shiver ran down Claire's spine. What did he want? I don't know. He just asked if I had contact with you if I knew where you were. Said it was about an inheritance matter. It sounded like a lie. Claire, what's going on? Sophia said things. Things about Ethan's company that you're in trouble. Listen to me, Eleanor. Claire lowered her voice. Don't talk to anyone. Don't give information to anyone. Change hotels if you have to. This is bigger than I thought. And it's older. It has to do with Dad. With Dad? What do you mean? I can't explain now. But promise me you'll be careful, and that you trust me. I always trust you, Eleanor said, her voice trembling slightly. But I'm scared. Me too. But fear is useless now. I'll call you soon. Be careful. She hung up. She leaned against the cold surface of the window. Outside, on the deserted street, a man in a dark jacket was walking slowly, looking at the door numbers. He stopped in front of number 8. He looked up at the window. Claire took a step back into the shadows. The man took out a cell phone, spoke briefly, and kept walking. "Leo?" Claire said without turning. "Do you have a back exit?" The chef nodded grimly. "Yes, through the cellar. It leads to a parallel alley." He came over, placing a heavy, warm hand on her shoulder. "Take the box. Take everything. And remember, Claire, you're not alone. Your mother sent you an ally, and I don't intend to fail her or you." Claire gathered the papers, the photo, the letter, the plan, and put them in her purse, along with her mother's envelope. The wooden box remained empty on the table, a shell of secrets now revealed. She followed Leo through a hidden door behind a curtain down a narrow stone staircase to a small cellar full of bottles. At the far end, another low iron door. "This leads to Fountain Street. Go left and you'll be at Washington Square. Lose yourself in the crowd." "Thank you, Leo, for everything. Thank you for being your mother's daughter. Now go and fight Claire, for all three of you." Claire pushed the heavy iron door. The grey, cold daylight blinded her for a moment. Before leaving, she turned one last time. "Leo, do you think my mother would be proud?" The chef looked at her, and for the first time, Claire saw something wet shine in the tough man's eyes. "She'd be so proud she wouldn't know what to do with you, kid. Now go." Claire stepped out into the alley. The door closed behind her with a dull thud. She breathed in the cold air. In her purse, the past and present weighed like lead. But for the first time in years, she didn't feel lost. She felt focused. She had a clear enemy, and she had a why. She walked quickly toward the square, blending in with the crowd. The man in the dark jacket was gone, but she knew it wouldn't be the last time. The battle had begun. And she, the daughter of Isabel and Julian, the failure, the decoration, was going to win it or die trying. Arthur Martin lived in a low-slung house with a small garden at the end of a quiet street on the outskirts of the city. The air smelled of wet earth and pruned roses. Claire rang the bell, feeling the weight of the folder under her arm. Inside, the sound of slow footsteps. The door opened. The man who appeared was tall, stooped with age, with thin white hair and thick plastic-framed glasses. His faded blue eyes scanned her from top to bottom, stopping at her face. They lit up. "Isabel," he murmured, then instantly corrected himself. "No, you're not her. You're Claire, the younger daughter. You have her eyes. The same look." "Mr. Martin, I'm Claire. Claire Solar. Leo told me." "I know why you're here," he interrupted in a voice that was hoarse but firm. Come in, come in. It's not good for us to be seen at the door." He led her into a living room crowded with antique furniture, books, and above all, blueprints. Rolled blueprints spread on tables, blueprints hanging on the walls, the study of an architect who had never stopped being one. "Sit down. Coffee, or would you prefer something stronger?" he asked as he settled into a worn leather armchair. "Coffee is fine, thank you." As Arthur moved clumsily toward a small kitchen, Claire observed the blueprints. She recognized the style, the elegance of the lines, the spaciousness. They were her father's. "He was the best," Arthur said, as if reading her mind, returning with 2 steaming mugs. "Your father, a visionary with a sense of space of light that very few have or had." He let out a sigh. "But this country, you know, has always been hard on visionaries. It prefers the copycats, those who know whose hand to shake." Claire took the mug, seeking warmth in her hands. You wrote to my mother about a building in Miami. Arthur nodded slowly. He took off his glasses, cleaning them on the hem of his sweater. Yes, the Mirador building in South Beach. A beautiful project. A residential block with a communal inner courtyard full of light, with sea views from every balcony. He submitted it to a competition and won. It was his big break. He took a sip of coffee. But then everything went wrong. The developer who held the rights, East Coast Construction, went bankrupt overnight. Debts, licensing problems. Your father was left without a project and with debts. That was the beginning of the end. And then the building was built. Arthur looked at her intently. Yes, 5 years later, on the same plot. Smaller, uglier, but with the central idea stolen, that inner courtyard, that layout. The essence. It was signed by another architect, a guy named Willis, a man with no talent but a lot of connections. And the developer was another company, Gold Coast Investments, which is a subsidiary of Sterling Holdings. Claire concluded, her throat dry. Exactly. Arthur leaned forward, his eyes shining with an old anger. I investigated it, Claire, secretly for your father, because when he died, I knew something didn't add up. I found a thread and pulled. Gold Coast was a front. The money, the orders came from the top, from the holding company. And at the head of the holding company at that time was your husband's mother, Catherine Sterling Figueroa. The name resonated in the silent room. Claire knew it, she had read it in the documents, but hearing it from this man with such certainty made her stomach turn. Why? She asked, though she already knew the answer. Why would they do that? To steal an idea? My father wasn't that well known. He wasn't a threat. Ah, but he was. Arthur tapped the table with his finger, making the cups rattle. He was a talent, Claire. A real talent. And he had dared to reject her, to humiliate her. Catherine Sterling doesn't forget, and she doesn't forgive. Ruining him professionally was just the first step. Stealing his idea, building it without him showing him that she could take what he created and turn it into something vulgar and hers. That was the icing on the cake, the perfect revenge. And when he died, heartbroken and in ruin, she must have toasted with champagne. Claire closed her eyes. She saw her father in his last months, pacing his empty studio, touching the dusty models with a sadness so deep it seemed to have absorbed him. Now she understood. It wasn't just failure. It was theft. The injustice. Do you have proof? She asked, opening her eyes. Something, anything that can prove the connection. Something more than suspicion. Arthur hesitated. Then with a grunt, he stood up and went to an old metal filing cabinet locked with a padlock. He opened it with a key he wore around his neck. He pulled out a thick manila folder full of papers. I didn't have this when I spoke to your mother. I got it later, from a delicate source. A former accountant at Sterling Holdings, with regrets. Or maybe just a desire for his own revenge. He placed the folder in front of her. There are transfers from Gold Coast to an account in Switzerland. From that account, payments to a certain Willis the architect who signed the project. And more interestingly, payments to a judge, to a zoning official to accelerate the bankruptcy of East Coast Construction and fast-track the permits for the new project. It's all here. It's the smoking gun, Claire. Claire opened the folder with trembling hands. They were photocopied documents, handwritten notes, bank statements with underlined numbers and names. And in the middle of it all, a report from a private investigation agency hired by Arthur years ago with photos. One of them showed Catherine, younger but unmistakable, leaving an office building with a man in a suit. At the bottom of the photo, handwritten CSF, meeting with AW architect Willis. This is incredible, Claire murmured. It's dangerous, Arthur corrected. If these people find out you have this, your husband, or that harpy of a mother, they already know, Claire said dryly. Or at least they suspect I know something. Last night at a restaurant, they publicly humiliated me. They're trying to scare me. And today I was followed. Arthur paled. Then you have to leave. You have to go to the police, to a judge. No, I still need more. I need to understand everything. Claire looked up, meeting his eyes. You mentioned a studio, my father's studio. After it went bankrupt, did he keep anything blueprints projects? Something they couldn't steal? Arthur thought for a moment, rubbing his chin. Yes. Your mother, when everything fell apart, she rented a small space, a storage unit in an old building near Grand Central to store your father's things. She didn't want them in the house. Too many memories. I helped her move everything. Books, models, blueprints. Then when she got sick, she gave me the key, in case you ever asked. He paused. I haven't been back since. It must be full of dust. But is everything there? Or should it be, give me the address and the key? Arthur Piabja fumbled in a drawer and handed her an old, large-toothed key tied with a string to a plastic tag with a handwritten address. 12 Oblivion Lane, Unit B1. Be careful, Claire. If they're following you, that place is the last place they'd look. They don't know it exists. Thank you, Arthur, for everything, for being a friend to my father and my mother. It was the least I could do. The old man walked her to the door, placing a bony hand on her arm. Make them pay, kid. For Julian, for Isabel, and for you. Oblivion Lane was a narrow, grim alley near the train tracks of Grand Central. Number 12 was a decaying brick building with peeling paint. Unit B1 had a rusty green metal door. Claire looked around. The street was deserted. She inserted the key into the lock. It screeched, but turned. The smell of dust dampness and old paper hit her as she opened the door. A bare bulb hung from the ceiling. Claire flipped the switch. The yellowish light revealed a small, crowded space. Boxes stacked to the ceiling, architectural models covered with sheets like ghosts, rolls of blueprints leaning against the walls. Her heart pounded. It was like entering the tomb of her father's dreams. She took a deep breath and began to search. She didn't know what she was looking for. She just trusted she would recognize it. She checked boxes full of architecture books, old magazines, rusted drawing tools. Then in a corner she found a large wooden chest, locked with a rusty padlock, but no key. She looked around and saw a pile of tools. With an old hammer and a chisel, after several attempts, she managed to break the lock. Inside the chest, protected by a burlap cloth, were rolls of blueprints, the largest, the most carefully kept. She unrolled them reverently on the dusty floor, using boxes to hold down the corners. They were her father's projects. Sketches, ideas, designs. A house in the mountains, a museum, a skyscraper with fluid lines. And then she found it. The blueprint for the Mirador building. Her father's signature, Julian Solar, in a corner with the date 1987. It was beautiful, full of light air life, just as Arthur had said. But then, under that blueprint, she found another smaller one. A clumsy, childlike pencil drawing of a building with many windows, a big sun in one corner, and a signature in large, shaky letters. Claire, 5 years. It was her drawing. One of the many she made as a child, sitting at her father's feet in his studio, imitating him. He had kept it. He had kept it with his most important plans. Tears blurred her vision. She caressed it with a finger, wiping away the dust. And then, as she moved the blueprint, Something slipped out from inside the roll. A thin envelope and a small leather-bound notebook with worn corners. Claire picked it up. It was her father's journal. She opened it to a random page. The firm, quick handwriting was familiar. May 3rd, 1998. Isabel is weaker. The doctors give no hope. I just want the pain to go away. But there is something I must do before. I must protect my daughters. Catherine Sterling has reappeared. She's offering to help with my debts. I know what she wants. She wants the file. All the documentation on the Miami project. She thinks I have proof. And I do. Not in the studio. In the place only Isabel and I know. If something happens to me, my love, I hope you find this and give it to whomever is appropriate. To the law. To Claire when she is older. To someone who can stand up to them. Forgive me for not being stronger. Forgive me for everything. Claire's heart stopped. The file. Proof. She looked at the envelope that had fallen out with the journal. It was sealed. On the outside, her father's handwriting. For Isabel, or whomever she chooses. With trembling hands, she opened it. It contained a few sheets, photocopies of financial documents, and a list of names and account numbers. And a shorter letter. Dearest Isabel, or whoever reads this. If this has reached your hands, I am likely gone. I'm sorry. The people you see in these documents are responsible for my ruin. Catherine Sterling is the head, but she does not act alone. There is a lawyer, an Emil Vance, who handles her dirty affairs, and an official Raymond Serra in the zoning department. They orchestrated everything. The Mirador competition was rigged. I won, but they had already awarded the project to their frontman, Willis. It was all a farce to steal my idea and sink me. The proof is here. The payments, the transfers, the emails. Yes, I kept copies of everything. Use them wisely. And above all, protect our daughters. Never let them get near that family. They are vipers. With all my love forever, Julian. Claire slumped onto a box, breathless. She had it. She had everything. It wasn't just suspicions, not just clues. It was proof. Proof of the conspiracy to ruin her father. Proof that directly linked to Catherine. The sound was faint, almost imperceptible. The creak of a floorboard in the hallway outside the door. Claire froze, holding her breath. She hadn't made a noise, she was sure. The street was empty. She must have imagined it. Another sound. A soft scuff like a foot dragging just on the other side of the metal door. Someone was there. She looked around desperately. There was no back exit, only the door she had entered through and the single bulb that illuminated her as if on a stage. With quick, silent movements, she rolled up the blueprints, the journal, and the documents, and stuffed them inside her coat, buttoning it up. She turned off the light, plunging the room into near total darkness, broken only by the thin line of light seeping under the door. She crouched behind a pile of boxes near the door and picked up the hammer she had used before. It was heavy in her hand. Outside, she heard the metallic sound of something tampering with the lock. A faint click, then a slow creak, as if someone were trying to open the rusty door without making a noise. Claire gripped the hammer's handle, her knuckles white. Her mind was racing. Was it Ethan? Someone sent by Catherine? The man in the grey car. The door opened slowly a few inches. A tall, thin figure was silhouetted in the frame, peering into the darkness. It wasn't Ethan. It was a man she didn't know, dressed in dark clothes with a cap pulled low over his face. The man switched on a small flashlight, sweeping the space with the beam of light. The light passed over Claire's head, hidden behind the boxes. It illuminated the open, empty chest. The man cursed under his breath. He stepped inside cautiously. His silhouette grew closer. Claire held her breath. She could smell his cheap cologne, the scent of tobacco. The man bent down, inspecting the chest. Claire saw her chance. Just as the man was turning, perhaps suspecting someone else was there, she sprang, not toward the man, but toward the door. She ran with all her might, slamming the metal door against the man, who let out a grunt of surprise. She shot out into the alley, running without looking back. She heard heavy footsteps behind her curses. She turned right, then left, into a labyrinth of narrower alleys. Her lungs burned. She didn't stop until she reached a busier street, blending in with a group of tourists. Only then did she dare to look back. The alley was empty. The man hadn't followed her, or had lost her. She leaned against a wall, panting, her heart about to burst. She was still clutching the hammer. She dropped it into a nearby trash can. Inside her coat, her father's plans and documents weighed like a slab. But now they also carried the weight of certainty. They weren't just after her past. They were after her present. And they knew she was close to the truth. She looked at the address on the key tag. Oblivion Lane. How fitting. Catherine wanted everything to fall into oblivion. Her father, his work, his daughter. But Claire would not forget. And now she had the weapons to remind the world. The sound of her own heartbeat echoed in her ears. Claire slipped into the first open entryway. She found an office building with a deserted lobby. She leaned against the cold marble wall, trying to calm her breathing. Outside on the street, people passed by, oblivious. She didn't see the man in the cap, but she knew he hadn't gone far. He was close. She pulled out her phone. Her trembling fingers dialed Leo's number. Claire. He answered on the first ring, his voice tense. They followed me to my father's storage unit. Someone tried to get in. I managed to escape. A muffled curse on the other end of the line. Are you okay? Did they hurt you? I'm fine, but they know I was there or that I was close. She lowered her voice even more. I found something, Leo. Proof of what they did to my father. Names, documents. Don't talk on the phone. Leo's voice was an urgent whisper. Come here to Memory Lane. But don't come directly. Take a cab, get out 2 blocks early, walk around. Make sure you're not being followed. Come in through the cellar door. You remember? Yes, in half an hour. She hung up. Before leaving, she took out her father's small notebook and the documents from the envelope. She quickly photographed them with her phone page by page. Then she uploaded the images to an encrypted folder in the cloud, one she had created months ago for this purpose. She sent the access link and password to 2 email addresses, Sophia's, her lawyer, and a backup account only she knew. If something happened to her, the information wouldn't be lost. She stepped out onto the street, cautiously blending in with a group of tourists leaving Grand Central. She took the subway, changed lines twice, and finally emerged several stops later. She hailed a cab and gave a fake address, getting out before arriving. She walked without haste, but without pause, turning random corners, looking at reflected storefronts until she reached Memory Lane. The back alley was empty. The iron door to Leo's cellar was ajar. Inside, in the back room, she found him shredding documents in a manual paper shredder. A pile of clippings already filled a box at his feet. What are you doing? Claire asked, closing the door behind her. Leo looked up. He had ink stains on his hands and a grim expression. Cleaning up, just in case. We can't be careless. He stopped shredding. Show me what you found. Claire spread the documents on the work table, still stained with flour and cocoa. Leo examined them in silence, his expert eyes scrutinizing every line. His face darkened as he read. This is more than I feared, he murmured, pointing to the names. Emil Vance, I've heard of him. He's a shark, a lawyer who fixes problems for families like the Sterlings and Raymond Serra. That name rings a bell. I think he's retired now, but back in his day he had a lot of power in the zoning department. He looked up at Claire. With this, you can not only sink Catherine, you can send her and others to prison. But these are events from over 20 years ago. Claire objected, though without conviction. The statute of limitations. Fraud, malfeasance, racketeering. Some of these crimes have very long statutes. And this isn't just the past, Claire. It's the key to the present. If Catherine did this then and got away with it, it's because she had a system her son Ethan has inherited and perfected. These names, he tapped the paper with a finger, could be the gateway to what's happening now to the Cayman Islands accounts, to the current bribes. Claire nodded. She had thought so too. I need to talk to this Emil Vance or someone who knows him. That's dangerous. He's a connected man. Everything is dangerous now, Leo, Claire said, suddenly sitting down exhausted. They followed me. My sister in New York says someone is asking about her. Sophia says Ethan is gutting the company. And last night at that dinner, it was a declaration of war. I can't hide anymore. Leo reflected, wiping his hands on a rag. There's a possibility. A person I've heard about over the years. A woman named Constance Ruiz. She was your father's secretary toward the end, the one who was with him the longest. When the studio went bankrupt, she disappeared. Went to live in some town, I think. But people talk. They say she knows things she never said. Where is she? That's more difficult. Years ago I heard she was in a town in upstate New York, maybe in the Catskill or near Albany. My memory. Leo gestured in frustration. But I could ask. I have contacts, old friends from when your mother and people who know people. Ask, please. That woman could be the key, a witness. I will, but carefully. Leo put the documents in a clean envelope and gave it to Claire. You keep this in a safe place. No here. At that moment, Claire's burner phone vibrated. It was a message from Sophia, short and urgent. Call me. Urgent. Claire dialed her number. Sophia, what's wrong? Her lawyer's voice sounded tense, restrained. Claire, I just received a summons. From Ethan. He's filing for divorce on grounds of abandonment and emotional instability. He's attached a private medical report that supposedly certifies you suffer from an anxiety disorder that makes you unfit to make financial decisions. He's asking for preventative custody of all shared assets and the appointment of a court administrator. Basically, he wants to leave you on the street without a cent. Claire felt the ground open up beneath her. It wasn't a surprise, but the speed, the crudeness. A medical report. What's he talking about? I haven't seen any doctor. It's a dirty trick. They have someone who will sign anything for money. But it's believable, Claire. After your performance last night at the restaurant with that smile. They could argue erratic behavior. And if they manage to freeze the assets, they can't. I have my own accounts, my studio, the little I've saved. Your accounts are in your name, but the bulk of the money, the properties, it's all in the name of the marital partnership, or directly in the names of Ethan's companies. He has control. If a judge accepts the preliminary injunction, you'll be cut off, and you'll need money to fight Claire, for lawyers, for investigators. Claire closed her eyes. She could see it. The mousetrap Sophia had talked about was closing around her. Financial pressure, legal pressure, personal pressure. They wanted to suffocate her, make her surrender. It's not going to happen, Sophia. I won't give up. I know. That's why I'm calling. There's something else. I received an anonymous call from a woman. She didn't give her name, Just said she had information that might interest you about your husband. That if I wanted to know more, I should go to Central Park this afternoon, to the Bethesda Terrace, at 5. Claire opened her eyes. A woman. What else did she say? Nothing else. She hung up. It could be a trap, Claire. A way to draw you out, to intimidate you, or to set you up. Like at the storage unit, Claire thought. But it could also be Claudia, the mistress. Sophia had mentioned her existence in passing, a woman who might have her own reasons for wanting to hurt Ethan. I'm going, Claire said, with a decisiveness she didn't feel. Claire, it's not wise. We need allies, Sophia. Information from the inside. If this woman has something, it's worth the risk. But I won't go alone. She looked at Leo, who was listening with concern. Leo, can you? The chef nodded slowly. I'll go with you. I'll watch from a distance. Thank you. Sophia, stay near the phone. I'll call you after. She hung up. Leo was already grabbing a jacket. Central Park is crowded at this hour. It's a good place for a discreet meeting, but also to get lost. How will you know who it is? She'll find me, Claire said, putting the envelope with the documents in her purse alongside the pepper spray she now carried everywhere. And I'll recognize her. We Ethan Sterling's women have a certain family resemblance. The Bethesda Terrace gleamed under the golden light of the late afternoon. Around it, the lake reflected the trees and the groups of tourists strolling by. Claire sat on a bench with a good view of the entrances, pretending to read a book. Leo was a few yards back, near a newsstand, wearing sunglasses and a cap, looking like just another tourist. It was 5:05. The woman hadn't appeared. Claire was beginning to think it was a cruel joke or a trap when she saw her. She was impeccably dressed in a cream-coloured pantsuit and an expensive handbag, tall, slender, with dark hair pulled back in a perfect bun. She was accompanied by a small boy of about 3 who was pulling on her hand toward the ducks in the lake. But her dark, anxious eyes scanned the area, searching until they landed on Claire. Their gazes met. The woman paled slightly. She said something to the child, left him with a nanny Claire hadn't noticed before, and walked toward the bench. She walked with elegance, but with tension. She sat down beside her without looking at her, fixing her gaze on the fountain. Thank you for coming, she said, in a low, well-modulated voice. Claudia? Claire asked without preamble. The woman gave a slight nod. Yes, Claudia Hayes. And you're Claire, the wife. For the first time she looked at her. Her eyes were beautiful, but they were marked by fatigue, and something else, fear. I know I have no right to ask you for anything or to expect your trust, but I need to talk to someone. And you're the only person he's hurt more than me. Claire heard the sincerity in her voice, or at least a convincing version of it. Why? What has he done? Claudia took a deep breath. She fiddled nervously with the ring on her finger. A large diamond, but of a design that was familiar to Claire. Ethan had once shown it to her, saying it was for a special client, a lie like everything else. I've been with him for 4 years. I started as his lawyer at Sterling Holdings. Then, promises, lies, the same old story. Her voice trembled a little. A year ago I got pregnant. At first he seemed happy. Then when Leo was born... She glanced at the child who was now feeding the ducks under the watchful eye of the nanny. Things changed. He wanted me to give him up for adoption to hide him, said it wasn't the right time. When I refused, the threats began. Subtle at first, then more direct. He said he'd ruin my career, that he'd make me lose custody, that no one would believe a jilted mistress against him. And the ring? Claire asked, pointing to her hand. Claudia gave a bitter smile. A bait. to keep me quiet, to make me think that one day she took it off. It's fake. Cubic zirconia, like his promises. A week ago he told me he was leaving, that he had to fix his affairs, that he couldn't go on with this anymore. He offered me money, a ridiculous amount, in exchange for my silence and for me to leave New York with my son. And you don't want to leave? I can't. The cry was muffled, but filled with desperation. My life is here, my job. And he wants Leo, but as a possession, something to control, not as a son. I know if I leave, he'll find me and take him from me. He has the means, the contacts. Claire watched her. The fear was real, the pain too, but she needed more. And why come to me? I'm the last person who should help you. Because you know him. Because you know what he's capable of. And because— Claudia lowered her voice even more. Because I know things. Things about his business, about the transfers, the offshore accounts, about the bribes to officials to get building permits. I've seen it. I've signed some documents, not really knowing what I was doing at first, until I realized. And now with this divorce, with the pressure he's under, he's desperate. He's making very risky moves. And his mother is pushing him. She's the one really pulling the strings. Claire nodded slowly. It was confirmation of what she already knew, but from the inside. A first-hand testimony. What do you want in return? Claire asked directly. Claudia looked at her, surprised by her frankness. Help. For me and my son. Protection. To testify against him if necessary, but with guarantees. I want to disappear. Start over far from here. But I need a safe passage and enough money to never have to look back. I don't have any money, Claudia. He's taking everything from me. But you have this, Claudia said, and pulled a small, thin envelope from her purse. I found it months ago in his study in a folder I wasn't supposed to open. But I did, just in case. Claire took the envelope. Inside were several photocopies. Swiss bank account statements, transfers to names she recognized from her father's documents, Emile Vance, Raymond Serra. But there were also new names, and most importantly, a draft of a sales contract for a shell company signed by Ethan for several $1 million. A company that was listed as the owner of a plot of land in the Florida Keys, a plot Claire knew was contaminated and had no building permits. It was a full-blown fraud, a way to siphon money out of Sterling Holdings and into a black hole. With this and my testimony, we can sink him, Claudia whispered, her eyes shining with a mixture of fear and determination. But I need your word that when this is over, my son and I will be safe, far away. Claire looked at the documents. They were the missing piece, the link between the crimes of the past and those of the present, the proof that Catherine's system was still operating through her son. You have my word, Claire said, putting the documents away. But I need more. I need you to stay where you are, to act normal, to warn me of any move from Ethan, any order from his mother. And I need access to his computers, his files. Can you do that? Claudia hesitated, biting her lip. Then she nodded. Yes. He still trusts me, or thinks he has me under control. I can access his laptop. He has all his passwords written down in an encrypted file, but I know the password. It's the name of his first yacht. Arrogant. She gave a sad smile. I know because he told me one night when he was drunk. He never changes his passwords. Perfect. Claire stood up. We shouldn't meet in person again. It's too risky. Use this number to contact me. She passed her a piece of paper with a burner phone number. And be careful. If he suspects. I've been careful for a year. I know how to move. Claudia also stood up. She looked at Claire with something akin to admiration. Last night at the restaurant, when you smiled, Everyone thought you were crazy, but I understood. That smile is the smile of someone who is no longer afraid. Claire didn't reply, just nodded slightly and turned away, walking toward where Leo was waiting, pretending to read a newspaper. By the time she rejoined him, walking in the opposite direction, Claudia had already reunited with her son and the nanny, heading the other way. "Well," Leo asked in a low voice. "We have an ally on the inside," Claire said, without slowing her pace. "And we have the smoking gun. Now we just need to aim and fire." "What's the plan?" Claire looked toward the distant skyline, glowing faintly in the twilight. "Next week, Catherine is hosting her annual charity gala at the family mansion in the Hamptons. All of New York's high society will be there. The journalists, the bankers, the politicians. It's the event of the year for the Sterlings, where they show their best face, their facade of perfection." Leo looked at her, slowly understanding. "You're not thinking." "It's the perfect place," Claire said, and a cold glint shone in her eyes, the same determination Leo had seen in her mother so many years ago. "Where they publicly humiliated me is where their world will collapse. In front of everyone. I'm taking the war to their territory, Leo. And this time I won't smile until I see their masks fall." They walked in silence, lost in their thoughts. The alliance with Claudia was risky, but necessary. The information she brought was pure dynamite, but Claire knew it was a race against time. Ethan and Catherine were moving fast, trying to corner her legally and financially. She had to move faster, and she had to be flawless. One single mistake, and she wouldn't just lose. She'd end up like her father, broken, forgotten. Or worse. As they left the park, her phone vibrated again. It was a message from an unknown number. It just said, "Careful with Sarah. He's not retired. He's with them. They're watching you." Claudia was already delivering. Claire deleted the message, but the words were seared into her mind. "They're watching you." She knew it. She felt it in every shadow, in every reflection. But now she had eyes on the inside, too. And soon it would be her turn to speak. The fine rain slicked the windshield of the rental car. Claire had left her own in a garage just in case. Leo drove with fierce concentration, his large hands gripping the steering wheel. They had left the city before dawn, taking back roads. The lead on Constance, her father's ex-secretary, had taken them to a small town in upstate New York called Stone Creek, a place barely on the maps. "My contact says she's lived here for 20 years, Leo said, breaking a silence only punctuated by the windshield wipers. "Works as a caretaker for a rich Englishman who only comes in the summer. The rest of the year she lives alone, barely talks to anyone." "And how did you know she was here?" Claire asked, looking at the grey landscape of oak trees and rocks. "An old cheese supplier of mine has a cousin in this town. Said a very private woman from the city lived here who used to be the secretary for a famous architect. It had to be her." Leo made a gesture of uncertainty. "I hope she's the one." The town was a handful of stone houses clustered on a hillside. The rain made it look deserted, melancholic. Leo parked next to a mossy stone fountain. A faded sign pointed, "The Englishman's house, 500 yards." They walked up a muddy path under the persistent drizzle. The house was a large, dark stone structure, with a slate roof and a neglected garden. It seemed asleep. Leo knocked on the heavy wooden door. A long moment passed. Claire was beginning to think no one was home when they heard shuffling footsteps. The door opened a few inches, secured by a chain. An eye, surrounded by deep wrinkles, scrutinized them with suspicion. "Yes." The voice was raspy, like two stones grinding together. "Constance Ruiz?" Leo asked in his gentlest tone. The eye hardened. Doesn't live here. You're mistaken. The door began to close, but Claire reacted. Wait, please. I'm Claire. Claire Solar. Julian Solar's daughter. The name had an effect. The door stopped. The eye examined her again, closer this time, with an intensity that made Claire's skin crawl. It can't be, the voice murmured. Julian. Please, Mrs. Ruiz. I need to talk to you. My father. I need to know the truth about what happened to him. Another long silence, then the sound of the chain sliding. The door opened. The woman before them was small, stooped, with age, dressed in a thick sweater and a dark skirt. Her hair, completely white, was pulled back in a messy bun, but her steely grey eyes shone with a sharp intelligence and a deep sadness. Come in, she said, turning and leading them down a dark hallway to a large, old-fashioned but warm kitchen. It smelled of wood smoke and chamomile. A kettle was whistling softly on the wood-burning stove. Sit, she ordered, pointing to the wooden table. She filled 3 porcelain cups with the infusion. I don't get visitors, especially not from the city. She looked directly at Claire. But you have his nose, Julian's, and your mother's eyes. Isabel. How is she? She passed away years ago, Claire said softly. Cancer. Constance closed her eyes for a moment as if taking a blow. I'm sorry. She was a good woman. Too good for this world. Like your father. She opened her eyes, and now there were tears in them. So what brings Julian's daughter to this God-forsaken hole after all this time? The truth, Claire repeated. I know my father was ruined. I know the Sterlings had something to do with it. I found documents, names. Emil Vance, Raymond Serra. But I need to know more. I need to understand what happened and why. Constance took a sip of tea, her hands trembling. Emil Vance, a vulture in a suit. Raymond Serra, a corrupt pawn. But the head, the one who orchestrated it all, was her, Catherine Sterling. As she said the name, her voice filled with an old, well-preserved resentment. Your father rejected her, and she never forgave him. First, she tried to buy him, then destroy him. When he won the Mirador competition, she pulled her strings. The developer went bankrupt. The banks denied him credit. Clients disappeared. It was like a spider's web, each thread pulling another until he couldn't move. I found proof of that, Claire said. Transfers payments. That's just money. Constance cut in with disdain. The worst part was something else. The theft wasn't just of his project. They stole his name, his reputation. She stood up with an effort and went to an old cupboard. She took out a small, worn, black leather notebook. She placed it on the table in front of Claire. His journal. The real one, not the one he kept at home. This is his work journal, where he noted everything. His ideas, his meetings, his suspicions. Her finger, its knuckles deformed by arthritis, caressed the cover. He gave it to me the day he closed the studio. He said, Constance, keep this for me. Someday someone will need to know the truth. And you're the only person I trust completely. I left the city shortly after. In fear. They had tried to buy me off, to get me to say your father was incompetent, a dreamer who wasted money. When I refused, the threats started. Late-night calls. One day I found the tires on my car, slashed. That's when I knew I had to leave. Claire opened the journal. Her father's quick, confident handwriting filled the pages. Meeting notes, sketches, phone numbers. And in the final pages, dates and names lists of suspicious payments, and a sentence underlined forcefully. Catherine Sterling behind everything has a man in zoning Serra and an unscrupulous lawyer, Vance. They want the Mirador project, but with another architect. Willis, a puppet. They're offering me money to cede the rights, see, a pittance, If I refuse, they'll ruin me. What do I do? Claire turned the pages. Another entry a few weeks later. Meeting with Sarah. More pressure. He's threatening me with licensing problems for all my current projects if I don't accept. Says I have a week to decide. I've spoken with Isabel. She doesn't want me to give in. She says we'll fight. But I see the fear in her eyes, and the fear in my little girl's eyes. God, what have I done? The last entry, dated just a few days before the studio finally went bankrupt, read, I've made a decision. I can't give in. I won't give them the satisfaction. But I also can't drag my family into total ruin. I've contacted an old colleague, Arthur Martin. I'll give him copies of everything I have, and I'll give Constance the journal. If something happens to me, if I have an accident, as Vance has hinted, at least there will be proof. I hope Isabel and the girls are safe. And I hope someday someone makes these people pay. Claire looked up, her eyes filled with tears of rage. They hinted he could have an accident. Constance nodded, pale. Emil Vance. In the last meeting, when your father refused to give in, he told him Julian life has many turns. Sometimes the streets are slippery, sometimes people get distracted. It would be a shame if something happened to you with such a young family depending on you. It was a clear threat. Your father was a shadow of himself after that. He knew they weren't just after his job. They were after him. And why didn't he go to the police? Leo asked, his deep voice full of indignation. With what proof they were just words? And the Sterlings had and still have half the city in their pocket. What police would he go to? What judge? Constance shook her head. No. He knew. The only way was to hide the evidence and wait. Wait for someone with courage, or with as much to lose as he had to bring it to light. She looked at Claire. I suppose that someone is you. And this journal. No one else has seen it. No one. It's been buried in a cookie tin under a flagstone in the garden for 20 years. Until today. Constance sighed. Now it's yours. Do with it what you have to do. But be careful, child. That woman, Catherine, is dangerous. She hasn't changed. She's only become more powerful and more ruthless. I know, Claire said, closing the journal and placing it reverently in her purse with the other documents. But now I have this, and I have witnesses, you, if you're willing. Or Constance hesitated, fear evident in her eyes. Then she looked around the poor but warm kitchen, her refuge for 2 decades. I've lived in fear for too long, out of cowardice, because I wanted to live in peace. She took a deep breath. Julian was good to me. Isabel, too. If I can help their daughter. Yes. I'll testify if necessary. Tell me what I need to do. Claire felt immense relief. She wasn't alone. She had Leo, Sophia, Claudia on the inside. And now Constance, a direct witness to the original conspiracy. For now, stay here and be alert. If anyone asks for you, if you see anything strange, call me immediately at this number. She gave her a card with the burner number. Don't talk to anyone about our visit. I'll tell you the next step soon. Constance nodded. She walked them to the door. The drizzle had stopped, leaving a low, leaden sky. One more thing, Claire, Constance said, gripping her hand with surprising strength. Your father, in his last days, he was obsessed with a name, a place he overheard by chance in a conversation between Vance and Sarah. Hacienda de las Animas. He wrote it in the journal, but he didn't know what it was. He said it sounded like a place of ghosts. Maybe it means nothing, but he thought it was important, that it was where they hid something. Maybe the money, maybe something worse. Hacienda de las Animas. The name echoed in Claire's mind. It meant nothing to her, but she filed it away. Thank you, Constance, for everything. Go with God, child, and hit them where it hurts the most. The drive back to the city was silent, each lost in their own thoughts. Claire paged through her father's journal in the dim twilight. The entries were a map of desperation, but also of tenacity. Her father hadn't given up. He had saved proof. He had waited. Now it was her turn. As they reached the outskirts of the city, her phone vibrated. It was Sophia. Her lawyer's voice sounded tense, almost panicked. Claire, where are you? Returning to the city. What's wrong? They've acted. A judge accepted the preliminary injunction. All your accounts, the ones in your name and the joint ones, are frozen. You can't withdraw money, you can't sell or mortgage any assets. And there's more. She paused, catching her breath. Ethan's company, Sterling Holdings, has filed a criminal complaint against you for theft of trade secrets and industrial espionage. They claim they found confidential company files on your personal computer that you copied them to sell to competitors. Claire felt the world drop out from under her. It was a masterful, ruthless move. It not only left her without resources, but criminalized her. That's a lie. I know, Claire. But they've presented evidence, screenshots, access logs, all forged but convincing. The police could come looking for you for questioning. And if they detain you even for a few hours, it would be a media disaster. They'd paint you as a thief, a madwoman. All your credibility would be gone. What do I do? Claire asked, hating the desperate tone in her voice. For now, don't go to your home or any known place. Do you have a safe place to stay? Claire looked at Leo. He nodded immediately. No question needed. Yes, I have a place. Good. Stay there. Tomorrow morning, I'll file an appeal to lift the injunction, and we'll counterattack with the divorce suit for psychological abuse and infidelity with the evidence we have on Ethan. But I need time, Claire. And I need you off the radar. Don't use your cards. Don't call anyone from your regular number. Understood? Understood. And one more thing. Your friend. The one on the inside. Claudia? What about her? Ethan just fired her entire legal department overnight. Her too. Officially for cutbacks, but I've heard rumors. Rumors that he suspects a leak, that someone is passing information. If he thinks it's her. Claire hung up her heart, frozen. Claudia. If Ethan fired her, it was because he suspected, or because he wanted her out of the way, out of his sphere of control, so he could act against her without witnesses. She had to warn her. She dialed Claudia's burner number. It rang and rang until it went to voicemail. This is Claudia. Please leave a message. Claudia, it's me. Call me as soon as you can. It's urgent. Be careful. He knows something. She hung up, cursing silently. She looked out the window. New York City loomed a sea of lights under the dark sky. A sea that suddenly felt full of sharks. Leo, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Take me to your back room. And then I need a favor. A very big favor. Anything, Claire. Whatever you need. I need to get into Sterling Holdings, into Ethan's office, tonight. The air in Leo's back room was thick, heavy, with the smell of reheated coffee and tension. Constance's documents were spread across the table next to Julian's journal. Claire stared at them without seeing. Her mind was elsewhere in Ethan's office, in the glass tower of Sterling Holdings. You can't be serious, Claire, Leo said, rubbing his face with his hands. Breaking into his office is insane. It's exactly what they want for you to make a mistake, to do something illegal. If they catch you, all this proof will be worthless. You'll go to jail. If we don't do something, I'll go to jail anyway, Claire retorted, her voice flat. The trade secrets complaint is fake, but it's believable. I need something more. Something that proves without a doubt that he's behind everything. The Cayman Islands accounts the current bribes. I need access to his computer, his paper files. Claudia said she had the passwords, but now she's not answering. I don't know if she's okay or if... She left the sentence hanging. The fear for Claudia and her son was a knot in her stomach. Still, the building will have security. Cameras, guards. Not at night, not in the executive area. Years ago, Ethan took me there once to pick up some documents. It was late, everything was open. They're overconfident. They think their power protects them, that no one would dare challenge them on their own turf. Claire looked up at Leo. I'm not asking you to come with me, just to get me one thing. Leo stared at her, then sighed in resignation. What thing? A pass. A temporary company ID for cleaning or maintenance staff. Something that will let me get past the main reception in the late afternoon when people are still around, but most have left. Leo thought, his fingers drumming on the table. I might be able to get you a generic access card, the kind external cleaning companies use. They're universal for buildings in that area. I have a guy who supplies uniforms and credentials to those companies. It's a big expensive favor. Pay him whatever he asks. I'll get the money. How Sophia said your accounts are frozen. Claire stood up and went to her purse, hanging on the back of the chair. She took out a small travel jewelry box and opened it. Inside were no expensive jewels, just a few simple pieces. And in a hidden compartment, a necklace. It was simple gold with a small emerald pendant. The last valuable thing she had left from her mother. Isabel had given it to her on her wedding day. So you'll always wear something green, something that grows, even if everything around you seems grey. This is worth something. Sell it. Leo looked at her, then at the necklace, and shook his head firmly. No, you're not selling this. I'll put up the money. It's an investment. Before Claire could protest, he continued. But in return, I'm going with you. You're not going alone. If something goes wrong, two heads are better than one. And I know that building. Years ago, before opening Aura, I catered an event on their rooftop. I know the service entrances. Claire wanted to refuse to protect him, but the determination in Leo's eyes was unshakable. She nodded, feeling a bittersweet relief. She wasn't alone. Okay. When? Tonight. My contact can have the card and a couple of generic cleaning uniforms by this evening. We'll go at the shift change around 7. People are leaving, the cleaning crew is coming in. We'll blend in. You go into the office. I'll act as a lookout in the hall. 30 minutes, Claire. No more. No matter what you find or don't find in 30 minutes, we're gone. 30 minutes, Claire agreed. The burner phone rang. It was Claudia. Claire snatched it up. Claudia, are you okay? Claire. Claudia's voice was a gasp, as if she'd been running. I'm sorry I couldn't talk. I had to leave my apartment. Ethan came this morning. With 2 thugs. No, he didn't hurt me physically. He just interrogated me. Wanted to know if I'd spoken to anyone, if I'd copied anything. I denied everything, of course, but he didn't believe me. He said he knew there was a rat in his organization and he would find it. And when he did, he'd make sure it could never harm anyone again. Then he fired me with a ridiculous severance and told me to get out of New York. That if he saw me in the city after this week, he wouldn't be responsible for what might happen to me. Where are you now? And Leo, we're safe. In a place I won't say even on the phone. With a lifelong friend. But we can't stay here long. Claire, I have to get far away. And I need the money we talked about. I don't have it yet, Claudia, but I will. After the gala. I promise. But I need your help one more time tonight. I need to get into his office at Sterling Holdings. A panicked silence on the other end of the line. You're insane. It's a sure trap. He changed all the passwords yesterday. I know because I tried to remotely access some files for more security and they didn't work anymore. And he's hired a private security guy to watch the executive floor at night, a very dangerous ex-cop. His name is also Sterling, ironically. Louis Sterling. No relation, but just as ruthless. Claire exchanged a look with Leo. This changed things. He changed all the passwords, are you sure? His laptop won't take the old one and the desktop in the office has a new two-factor authentication system. You won't get in without his phone. Claudia paused. But there's something else. Something that might be more valuable than the computer files. What? A physical notebook. Ethan is paranoid about technology. He doesn't trust computers for the most sensitive things. The dirtiest stuff, the numbers for offshore accounts, not in company names, the codes, the names of his contacts in the government and the police, he writes it all down by hand. In a black leather-bound notebook with a metal clasp. He keeps it in a secret compartment in his desk. The top right drawer has a false bottom. It's activated by pressing a specific spot on the side. The notebook is inside. Claire remembered Ethan's monumental mahogany desk. He always bragged about it. And you know where the spot is? Yes, I can describe it to you. But Claire, it's so risky. If that guard Louis is around, we have to try. It's our only chance to get something irrefutable, something that can't be deleted or forged, Claire said, taking a deep breath. Send me an exact description by text. Then turn this phone off and don't turn it on until tomorrow. And Claudia, get ready. After tonight, everything is going to move very fast. Have your passport ready. It is. Good luck, Claire. And be safe. She hung up. Minutes later, a message arrived with a detailed diagram of the desk and instructions for opening the hidden compartment. Leo let out a long sigh. A private security guard. This is getting complicated. Yes, but we have an advantage. He's not expecting us. He thinks I'm cornered, scared, dealing with lawyers. He doesn't think I'd dare do this. Arrogance is his weak point. Leo nodded slowly. Then a cunning smile spread across his face. Maybe there's a way to distract this Louis Sterling. The building has systems, right? Fire alarms, for example. If, say, there was a small, harmless bit of smoke on the ground floor near the electrical panels, protocol would force the guard to go down and investigate, at least for a few minutes. Enough time? Claire looked at him alarmed. Start a fire. Not a fire. Smoke. A theatrical smoke bomb. Small, controlled. My contact, the one with the cards, could probably get something like that. He's a man of varied resources. Claire thought about it. It was another risk, another crime. But the image of the black notebook full of handwritten truths was too tempting. Do it. But nothing that can cause real harm. Just smoke, and disconnect it before the fire department arrives. Don't worry, smoking away is my specialty. Leo already had his phone in his hand. I'll make the calls. You rest. It's going to be a long night. At 6:45 p.m., Claire and Leo were staked out in an old rental car, a block from the Sterling Holdings Tower. They wore unflattering grey uniforms from Express Clean. Claire had pulled her hair back into a tight bun and wore myopic glasses with non-prescription lenses. Leo looked like a tired, nondescript maintenance man. They carried 2 buckets and mops as a cover. The card opens the loading and service doors and gives access to the staff elevators, Leo reviewed in a low voice. We'll go up to the 22nd floor, the executive floor. The emergency stairwell exit is next to the restrooms. That's our escape route if things go wrong. At 7:15 sharp, my contact will trigger the smoke bomb in the utility room on the ground floor. That will set off the local alarm. Hopefully it will draw our guard. We'll have maybe 10 minutes, 12 at most. Understood, Claire said, with a calmness she didn't feel. Her hands were sweaty inside the rubber gloves. At 7 p.m. sharp, they crossed the street and headed for the service entrance in a side alley. Claire swiped the card through the reader. A green light blinked and the door buzzed open. Her heart was pounding. They were in. The service lobby was empty except for some stacked boxes. A freight elevator stood with its doors open. They got in. Leo pressed the button for the 22nd floor. The elevator ascended with a slow groan. When the doors opened, they found themselves in a long, carpeted hallway, silent as a tomb. To the left, the doors to the vice president's offices. At the far end to the right, the double oak doors of Ethan's office. And sitting in a folding chair next to the door was a man. It was Louis Sterling, just as Claudia had described him, broad-shouldered, bald, with an expression of vigilant boredom. He held a tablet, watching a football game with the volume low. Hearing the elevator, he looked up. His small, bright eyes scrutinized them. "Hey, what are you doing here?" he asked in a harsh voice. "The cleaning shift for this floor isn't until 9. Leo coughed, adopting an air of confusion. "Oh no." The sheet said 722nd floor. "New boss, new schedules, you know. A mess. If you want, we can go down and ask." The guard looked at them suspiciously, but before he could say anything, a sharp beep came from the radio on his shoulder. A distorted voice said, "Alert smoke in the meter room ground floor. Proceed to investigate Louis." The guard swore, jumping to his feet. He hesitated, looking at Claire and Leo, then at Ethan's office doors, and finally at the elevator. The priority was clear, the incident on the ground floor. "Stay here. Don't touch anything. I'll be back in 5 minutes," he ordered, and took off running toward the emergency stairs, preferring them to the slow freight elevator. The moment the stairwell door closed behind him, Claire and Leo moved. 10 minutes, Leo whispered, positioning himself as a sentry in front of the elevator. "I'll warn you if he comes back fast." Claire ran to the oak doors. They were closed, but not locked. Ethan was so arrogant, he relied on his personal guard. She opened it and went inside, closing it behind her. The office was huge, with panoramic views of a city starting to light up. It was all cold, impersonal luxury. Claire didn't waste time admiring the view. She went straight to the monumental mahogany desk. She sat in Ethan's chair, still warm. A wave of revulsion washed over her. She took a deep breath and focused. The top right drawer. She opened it. Inside were the typical expensive desk utensils. She emptied everything onto the desk without care. Then she felt the inside of the drawer. Smooth wood. She remembered Claudia's diagram. She pressed with her fingers and on the right side about 4 inches from the front, near a small, irregular grain. An almost inaudible click. The bottom of the drawer lifted slightly at one end. Claire lifted it. Underneath, in a hollow lined with black felt, was the notebook. It was smooth black leather with a simple metal clasp. It looked innocuous, which made it perfect for hiding in plain sight. Claire grabbed it and opened it. The pages were filled with Ethan's tight, angular handwriting. Account numbers, bank names, Switzerland, Cayman Islands, Singapore. Amounts, dates, codes, and names. So many names. Some she recognized mid-level politicians, officials, judges. Others were new. And on one specially marked page, a diagram, a payment flowchart with arrows leading to a company called Gold Coast Investments, LLC, the same one that had ruined her father. And from there, arrows to an account in Liechtenstein in the name of one E.V., Emil Vance, and another thicker arrow to a foundation in Panama. The foundation bore a name, the Catherine Sterling Figueroa Foundation. There it was. The direct connection. The dirty money of the present, funding his mother's charity foundation, the perfect facade. Claire took out her phone and began photographing the pages one by one, flash off. Her heart was beating so hard, she was afraid it could be heard outside. She turned page after page. Bribes for building permits, payments to journalists to silence scandals. Transfers to an account in the Cayman Islands in the name of L. Sterling, Louis Sterling. The guard was on the payroll too. It had been almost 8 minutes. She had photographed over 30 pages. She heard 3 soft knocks on the door. Leo's signal, hurry up. She was almost done. She turned one more page and froze. This page had no numbers. It had names and cut-out pasted photos. Her photo. Her sister Eleanor's. Sophia's, her lawyer. Leo's taken in front of his restaurant. And Constance's, an old but unmistakable photo. Next to each photo, annotations. Next to Constance's, upstate monitor. Next to Leo's, knew the mother. Inquire. Next to Sophia's, pressure via bar association. And next to her photo and Eleanor's, Claire proceed with lawsuit/discredit. Eleanor find weak point, debts, NYU. They weren't just after her, they were after everyone she cared about. They had a file, a plan to methodically dismantle her life and her support network, person by person. With hands now trembling with rage, she photographed that page too. Then she heard the signal again, 2 quick knocks. Danger. She shoved the notebook into the large pocket of her uniform. She replaced the false bottom of the drawer, put the desk utensils back inside, closed it, and took a quick look around to make sure everything looked normal. Then she slipped out of the office, closing the door softly. Leo was by the elevator pretending to be distracted, but his posture was rigid. "Take the stairs," he whispered, without looking at her. "He's coming up in the elevator, I heard him call. He's angry. The smoke was a false alarm. He's suspicious." Claire nodded and headed for the emergency stairwell door, just as the main elevator doors on the other side of the hall dinged open. "Hey, you!" roared the voice of Louis Sterling. Claire didn't turn. She pushed open the stairwell door and ran down, taking the steps 2 at a time, the sound of her feet echoing in the concrete shaft. She heard the door open behind her and heavy footsteps begin to descend as well. "Stop, halt, or I'll shoot." He had a gun. Claire didn't know, but she didn't stop. She kept going, the notebook bumping against her hip with every movement. The cold air of the stairwell whipped her face. Floor 15, 12-8. The steps behind her sounded closer. He was in better shape. On the 5th floor landing, Claire saw a door marked Maintenance Basement. She kicked it open and ducked into a dark corridor filled with pipes and cables. She ran blindly, stumbling over boxes until she found another door. She pushed. It led to another, narrower set of service stairs. She went down one more floor and found herself in a basement filled with trash dumpsters and the hum of freezers. She crouched behind a large metal container, panting, trying not to make a sound. She heard the footsteps above at the maintenance door. "Stop." Then a curse. The man was hesitating, unsure which way she'd gone. She pulled out her phone. No service. Of course, she was underground. She prayed that Leo had been able to escape by another route. The footsteps receded, heading back up perhaps to get reinforcements or to watch the exits. Claire waited, counting to 200 with her heart in her throat. Then she emerged from her hiding place. In the gloom, she saw an arrow that said, "Loading dock exit." She followed the arrow past mountains of boxes until she reached a large closed metal door. It had a push bar. She pushed. The door swung open into a dark, damp back alley. The cold night air greeted her. She was out. A block from where they had left the car. No one was there. She took off her cap and uniform vest, stuffed them into a nearby dumpster, and began walking at a fast pace, but not running, blending in with the people leaving nearby theatres. 10 minutes later, she reached the car. Leo wasn't there. She waited with the engine running, checking all the mirrors. 5 minutes. 10. She was about to go look for him when the passenger door opened and he slid in, panting. His uniform rumpled and a smudge of grease on his face. "Lock it. Let's go," he said breathlessly. Claire peeled out and merged into traffic. "What happened?" she asked after a few blocks. "After you went down, he got out of the elevator. He saw me, asked me questions. I said my partner felt sick, had gone down for air. He didn't buy it. Asked for my ID. I showed him the fake card. He looked at it and knew instantly it was fake. Grabbed my arm. I managed to break free, kicked the mop bucket at his legs, and ran down the emergency stairs in the opposite direction from you. I got out through the parking garage. Got lost among the cars. Took a huge detour to get here." He rubbed his wrist, which was starting to bruise. "That guy has the strength of a gorilla." "I'm sorry, Leo." "Don't be sorry. Did you get it?" Claire nodded, touching the bulge of the notebook in her pocket. "I got it. And more than I expected. They have a file on all of us. On Constance, on you, on my sister." Leo let out a low whistle. "Then we have no time to lose. We have to act before they do." "The gala," Claire said, her voice firm. "It's in 2 days. That's our moment. Everything has to be ready. Sophia with the papers, you making sure we can get in. Constance ready to testify. Claudia ready to run. And me with this." She clutched the notebook. "I'm going to return his gift to his face, in front of all of New York." As she drove toward the relative safety of the back room, Claire felt the weight of the notebook like a loaded gun. She had the proof now. Her father's journal. Ethan's notebook, the past and the present, linked by the same greed and malice. The Sterling's gala would no longer be a celebration of their power. It would be their social funeral. And she, the failure, would be the funeral director. But first, she had to make sure all her allies were safe, because now she knew without a doubt that the war was total, and they had no limits. The mirror in the small safe-house apartment reflected a woman Claire barely recognized. She was not the submissive wife or the humiliated victim. She wore a red dress, simple but impeccably cut, the color of war of warning. She wore no jewelry except for the small emerald pendant from her mother, which Leo had miraculously recovered from the pawnbroker. In her clutch, there was no makeup, only a USB, drive the remote for a wireless projector, and her cell phone loaded with files scheduled to be sent to 3 major newspapers and the U.S. Attorney's Office at 9:30 p.m. sharp, in 30 minutes. Leo entered the room, dressed in the pristine uniform of a catering manager for Aura Catering Thistle, the shell company he had created for this night. He had secured the last-minute contract for the Catherine Sterling Foundation's charity gala. His eyes swept over Claire, and he nodded in approval. "Are you ready?" "Everything's ready. Sophia and an agent from the Economic Crimes Unit are among the service staff near the electrical panel. Constance is in a car 2 blocks away with a TV news van that has graciously offered its services. Your sister Eleanor is controlling the live stream online from the van. When you give the signal, she'll start recording and broadcasting on 3 social media platforms." He paused. "Claudia and her son are on a plane to Buenos Aires. They took off an hour ago, with the money you sent." Claire nodded. The money had come from the discreet sale of one of Ethan's forgotten watches, plus a contribution from Leo. It was enough for a new start. And Ethan, is in the main hall, playing the fool with a cocktail in his hand, very sure of himself. Catherine is on her throne receiving homage. They suspect nothing. They've reinforced security at the door, but they don't expect the attack to come from within, much less from the kitchen. Leo handed her a small audio device, a tiny microphone, so we can hear everything, and so if something goes wrong, we can sound the alarm. Claire clipped it to the inside of her neckline. Thank you, Leo, for everything. Don't thank me yet. Wait until this is over. Now let's go. It's your time. The Sterling's Hamptons mansion glittered like a vulgar diamond that night. Luxury cars paraded up the driveway. Discreet string music filtered through the open windows. Claire arrived on foot from a side street like a shadow. At the entrance, she showed an invitation card that Sophia had masterfully forged. The security guard, the same Louis Sterling, looked at her with a mixture of contempt and surprise. His narrowed eyes betrayed recognition, but the invitation was flawless, and throwing her out would cause a scandal. With a grunt, he let her pass. The ballroom was a sea of expensive dresses, fake laughter, and air conditioning. Claire paused at the threshold looking for them. She found them quickly. Ethan by the marble fireplace, telling an anecdote to a group of smiling politicians. Catherine on a central sofa, like an old venomous queen accepting compliments. It was Catherine who saw her first. Her pale eyes locked on Claire like daggers of ice. A cruel smile formed on her thin lips. She said something to the woman beside her, and then, in a clear voice that cut through the surrounding conversation, she called out, "Well, look who deigns to appear, my daughter-in-law. I thought after your last performance you would have learned to stay in your place, or in your asylum." An uncomfortable silence spread around her. All eyes turned to Claire. Ethan spun around, his expression of annoyance transforming into rage when he saw her. "What are you doing here?" he spat, advancing toward her. "You're not invited. Get out immediately before you're thrown out." Claire didn't move. She smiled. The same calm, maddening smile from the birthday dinner. "I've come to give my gift, Ethan. It is a charity gala after all, and I want to contribute to your mother's cause." Catherine rose with icy elegance. "We want nothing from you, Claire. Your mere presence here is an offence." Louis, remove her. Judgeguard Louis appeared at her side, grabbing Claire's arm, forcefully, but she didn't resist. She raised her voice, addressing the room. "That's a shame, because my gift is the truth, and the truth, they say, will set you free. Although in your case it will likely make you poor, and probably take your freedom away." Murmurs some nervous laughter. Ethan's face went pale with rage. "Are you on drugs? Is that it? Or has your instability gotten worse?" he shouted to a group of people. "Excuse me. My wife, as you know, is not well. The doctors you bought, yes," Claire cut in, shaking Louis's arm with a strength that surprised everyone. "Let go of me, or I'll show everyone here the monthly wire transfer Ethan Sterling makes to your account in the Cayman Islands, Mr. Sterling. Yes, I read your notebook." Louis's eyes widened. His hand fell away. "What? What is she talking about?" asked a man in a suit, a prominent banker. "She's talking nonsense," Ethan roared, but a bead of sweat was trickling down his temple. "She's sick. A resentful woman. Louis, call the police." "No need," Claire said. She took the remote from her clutch and pressed a button. On the large projection screen behind the orchestra, where images of the Foundation's charity projects were supposed to be displayed, a sharp image appeared. It was a page from Ethan's black notebook. His handwriting unmistakable. A Swiss bank account number. The amount $3 million. The date 2 months after the Foundation received a $3 million public grant to help disadvantaged children. A collective gasp swept the room. Catherine clutched her chest. It's a forgery, Ethan shrieked, lunging at Claire. But Leo, in his waiter's uniform, appeared out of nowhere and blocked his path with his solid presence. A forgery, Claire said, switching to the next image. Here are the transfers from the foundation to your mother's account in Panama. And here, she switched again, are the payments to Emile Vance's attorney for consulting services, which included bribing a judge to dismiss the investigation into the fatal workplace accident at a Sterling Holdings construction site 5 years ago. Chaos erupted. Shouts. Journalists, the few who were there, surged forward with their phones. Politicians tried to slip out discreetly. Catherine, pale as death, screamed at the guards to turn off the screen. But Sophia from the electrical panel had locked the controls. It's a lie. All manipulated by this crazy woman, Ethan roared. But his voice was breaking. And is this a lie too? Claire asked with terrifying calm. On the screen appeared photos of her father's documents, the blueprint for the Mirador building signed by Julian Solar, and next to it the photo of the built building signed by Willis. And then Constance's documents, Catherine's transfers through Gold Coast Investments to buy off the architect Willis and the official Sarah to steal the project and ruin my father. She turned to the room, her voice ringing out clearly. 30 years ago, Catherine Sterling ruined and robbed my father because he rejected her. And 5 days ago she tried to ruin me for the same reason. Because I am his daughter. Because I am a reminder of her failure and her evil. Catherine collapsed onto the sofa, not from fainting but from pure rage. Her bloodshot eyes locked on Claire. That trash your father was deserved what he got. He was a nobody, an arrogant fool who thought he was better than us, and you're just like him, a penniless nobody with heirs. The shouted confession in the icy silence that followed was more eloquent than any proof. A murmur of horror rippled through the room. The mask of the great philanthropic lady had shattered. At that moment, the ballroom doors swung open. 4 agents from the Economic Crimes Unit, accompanied by several uniformed police officers, entered. One agent addressed Ethan. Ethan Sterling, you are under arrest for the alleged crimes of embezzlement, money laundering, bribery, and document forgery. Another approached Catherine, who seemed to have aged 20 years in an instant. Catherine Sterling Figueroa, you are under arrest for the alleged crimes of fraud, malfeasance, and bribery in connection with events that occurred 30 years ago, and with the foundation you preside over. The handcuffs glinted under the luxurious chandeliers. Ethan screamed and kicked as they led him away. Catherine was taken away in a deathly silence, her head bowed, but her eyes, full of eternal hatred, were fixed on Claire. When they were gone, the silence was absolute. Everyone was looking at Claire. She took a deep breath and approached the microphone at the small podium. The orchestra had stopped playing. I apologize for the interruption to your evening, she said, her voice no longer cold but firm. The Catherine Sterling Foundation obviously no longer exists, but the projects, the children it supposedly helped, they do. I have spoken with the authorities. The seized funds will be directed to those causes overseen by an independent board. And as for the rest, she paused, looking for Sophia, who nodded with pride. The lawyers for the victims of Sterling Holdings' illegal practices are already organizing. Justice, though, late has arrived. She stepped down from the podium and began to walk toward the exit. People parted for her, some in fear, others with a strange new admiration. As she passed the grand fireplace, she saw the envelope. The same white envelope, stained with sauce, that Ethan had thrown in her face. Someone, perhaps a mocking servant, had left it on the mantelpiece like a macabre trophy. Claire took it, then went back up to the podium. The crowd, which had started to murmur excitedly, fell silent again. And now for the gift my husband despised. She pulled a folded paper from the envelope. It wasn't the documents she had saved. It was the originals. She unfolded them before the screen, which now showed a blank image. With the remote, she activated the document camera Leo had installed. On the giant screen, the drawing appeared in sharp focus, a modern, luminous building with hanging gardens and a revolutionary water management design. In the bottom corner, the signature Claire Solar Senior Thesis Project, 2012. "This is the project I graduated with honors for," Claire said. And for the first time, her voice showed emotion, pride. Ethan saw it once. He said it was a naive girl's fantasy, that it would never be built. He laughed at me. And this envelope, the one he threw in my face, contained the executive blueprints for that fantasy. Because for all these years of being his failed decoration, I kept working in secret. I perfected it. And last week, NYU's School of Engineering awarded me the prize for sustainable innovation for this design. A reputable developer has already bought the rights to build it. It won't be just another brick building. It will be a home for real families. My first project. She folded the blueprint carefully. This was my gift to him, my dream. And he threw it in the trash, just like he threw everything else away. She put the blueprint in her purse. She looked at the audience, at those stunned faces, some complicit, others ashamed. "The dinner, ladies and gentlemen, is over." And she stepped down from the podium, walking toward the grand door without looking back. No one tried to stop her. No one said a word. Only the sound of her heels on the marble floor, firm and clear, marking the rhythm of her new life, which was beginning at that very moment in the empty foyer of the house that was never her home.